After the absurd apocalypse of this nuclear war, all girls must marry and have 10 children before they turn 30. Otherwise, they will be expelled, and as the most popular female singer at the moment. However, Lucy chose a refugee as the target to complete the mission. His name is Robert. At this moment, he is hunting under the acidic rain. The wind and rain of the night did not stop. What he was waiting for was a giant sparrow. After the nuclear mutation, sparrows became the size of eagles. After several rounds of battles between human and beast, Robert, who hasn't eaten for several days, he erupted with a strong will to survive. He twisted the neck of the giant sparrow with his bare hands. He thought that this sparrow could be exchanged for several days' food for him and his younger brother at the grocery store. Suddenly there was a bang in his mind. Robert suddenly knelt down on the ground, as if a huge bronze bell rang in his mind. He fell into a complete chaotic darkness. And this time was different from before. The black mist in his mind actually cleared. In the scene, a palace inside was revealed. Robert suddenly opened his eyes. Incredulously, he stood up to take stock of himself. He sobered up so quickly this time. He originally had a chance to take a good look at the appearance of the palace. But he understood better. Falling unconscious in this wilderness is no different from courting death. He must now hurry back to the small town outside Shelter Fortress number 113. As he got up, a figure behind him raised a bone blade and said, "Give me the prey." However, the man did not finish his sentence. He just saw a large cast iron pot coming closer and closer into his field of vision. It smacked hard against his face. The robbers did not expect Robert to act so decisively and with such force. At that moment, Robert did not care about these things. He picked up the iron pot and rushed back. Not long after, he heard the footsteps approaching again. He hastily turned around and found that Robert had turned back, asking him if he wanted this sparrow. Originally, Robert had no intention of coming back. However, he heard a voice in his mind coming from the palace saying, "Mission! It is to give the prey to others." Robert stuffed the sparrow into the other person's arms without saying a word. The unfamiliar and neutral voice sounded again. Mission accomplished. Awarded the basic skill chart. Learn the abilities of others. The robber held the large sparrow tightly in his arms. He was about to say some words of thanks. "You are truly a good person." He hadn't finished speaking when he watched helplessly as Robert snatched the sparrow back. Robert said, "Even if you want it, I won't give it to you." Then he turned and left. The robber watched as Robert's figure disappeared into the distance, running wildly. He shouted, "Who are all these unknown people? What are you guys up to?" Because of the incidents of robbery and sudden unconsciousness, Robert returned later than expected. He glanced at the sky as darkness was about to envelop everything. It's extremely dangerous to pass through small town with prey at this time. During the day, the people from the refuge fortress come out to maintain order, but at night, they retreat back to the fortress. Robert, who was originally quite relaxed, suddenly became vigilant upon entering small town. He even drew a bone blade from his waist. "Don't mess with him." A voice ended the murmurs. Someone seems to know about Robert's past. How much is a giant sparrow caught by Robert overnight worth? Inspected by the grocery store owner, Walter. The sparrow weighs 3 pounds and 6 liang. He says sparrow meat is 201 yuan per kilogram. Let's make it 700 for you. He continued saying Apocalypse's meat price is not cheap, not to mention that it is wild game. After some bargaining, Robert quoted a price of 1,200. Walter emptied his savings and was still $2 short. Looking at the cotton-padded coat hanging above, the winter of the apocalypse is particularly cold. Robert didn't think twice and was ready to buy one for his younger brother. He looked at the wound on his hand scratched by a sparrow. "One is 210, inquired about the price of the antibiotic. "One is 210. This medicine is 210 per pill. You need to take it for 3 days in a row." Robert looked at his wound and said, "Forget it, I won't buy it." Wounds usually don't get infected in winter. After leaving the grocery store, Robert lifted the door curtain of his own home. The warmth inside seemed to make his body feel less stiff. Ryan, who was sitting inside the hut doing homework, looked up and saw Robert coming back, which filled him with delight. He asked, "When can I go hunting with you?" But how could Robert allow his dependent younger brother to take life-threatening risks with him? He said, "Knowledge is the most important thing. No matter what chaos happens in small town, the teacher is always the safest one. No one will have any ideas about harming the teacher." After saying that, he stood up to prepare to cook some sparrow innards for Ryan. At this time, Ryan also saw the injury on Robert's hand. The large iron pot rested on the stick. The fire in the hut cast flickering light on Robert's cheek. He said, "It's just a minor injury." The room fell silent. After a moment, Robert scooped out the sparrow innards from the pot and handed them to Ryan. He ate it. Suddenly, Ryan's eyes turned red. He said, "I won't eat you eat. You need to recover from your injury. Just a few days ago, I saw someone in small town getting into trouble because of a small wound. He ended up getting infected and died." Ryan stubbornly said, tears almost streaming down his face. Robert suddenly slapped Ryan in the face without warning, saying, "Remember, in this world, you and I cannot afford to shed tears. This world doesn't believe in tears. Look around us, who do you see? If you don't eat enough and someone breaks in at night and kills us, what will we do?" Ryan took the sparrow entrails handed to him by Robert and gobbled them up greedily. Tears never fell in the end. He has to learn to be as strong as Robert and not see Ryan as a pushover. Robert patted Ryan's head. He said, "Hurry up and eat. After you're full, try on the new cotton-padded jacket I bought for you." The two of them rested after finishing their meal. Robert closed his eyes and began to enter the spiritual realm inside the palace. Robert walked up to the round table where a piece of paper with writing on it lay. Basic skill chart. Can learn abilities from others. The palace was empty. Other than a few tables and cabinets, there was an old typewriter that had long been replaced by a catastrophe. There was nothing else. In this absurd apocalypse, a lonely woman often missed the little man who was 8 years younger than her. Due to life constraints, the woman was told by Ryan that she was no longer pure. After Robert fell asleep, footsteps could be heard outside the shelter. Boots on the muddy road after the rain had a unique slippery feeling. The curtain at the door was lifted up a corner. However, before the person outside completely lifted up the curtain, something happened. Ryan's bone blade was already against the opponent's neck. That is a pretty face. Outside the door is a beautiful woman. This woman is called Luna. The woman just walked in, and when she saw Ryan putting away his bone blade, her expression seemed somewhat unnatural. She asked, "Where is Robert? I heard he got injured. A sparrow pecked his hand." He said, "But Luna, you don't have to care so much about my brother. You are 8 years older than him. Whenever Robert falls asleep, Ryan appears remarkably mature when facing others." Luna blushed slightly and retorted, "I treat you both as younger brothers." After the conversation, the two fell silent one after another. Luna didn't know why but always felt that Ryan didn't like her very much. She chose to leave first. After Luna left, Robert's voice suddenly sounded behind Ryan. He said, "Don't bully Luna in the future. She is also not easy." However, Ryan's response was, "Bro, she's not clean. I saw her smoking a few days ago. The cigarettes are only available from the Fortress factory. Maybe she got them from some wild man." Robert said calmly, "Who is clean? In this world, those who want to survive can never be really clean. Everyone is driven by the pressures of life. Just keep your distance. Don't tease her. In this small town, a single woman who is too pure cannot survive." Two brothers sat down successively. Maybe I also have some kind of ability now. Ryan, who was sitting at the door of the hut, picking at the door curtain and looking at the starry sky after the rain, was stunned for a moment. "He said he's not quite sure yet. He needs to give it a try. Robert recalled the scene when he first met Ryan. He said that as long as you make a wish, it can come true. Ryan's ability is fortune. However, there will be backlash after making a wish. Suddenly, a shooting star streaked across the sky. Ryan instinctively clasped his hands together to make a wish, but he was stopped by Robert. He said, "Don't make random wishes. It will lead to trouble." The slender Ryan gazed at the disappeared shooting star and absent-mindedly said, "Why did the shooting star fly so fast? What if everyone is not able to make a wish in time?" Robert thought for a moment and said, "It flies fast. Maybe it doesn't want to hear any of your wishes." In the morning, Robert followed Ryan to schoolhouse for class. There is only one teacher in schoolhouse named Zach, who teaches all the classes by himself. Many parents send their children to schoolhouse not to educate them, but to make it easier for them to find a spouse in the future. Especially for educated girls, they are usually able to marry into a good family. In this era, being able to read, write, and understand arithmetic up to 3 digits is already considered quite good. However, people as eager to learn as Robert are still relatively rare. After class, Zach let the eavesdropper Robert stand at the door to listen to the lesson, then snuck into the backyard of schoolhouse during lunchtime. Zach was eating stir-fried cabbage. Robert proactively handed the cigarette to Zach with a big smile. He said, "Thank you, sir, for letting me stand at the door to listen to the lecture." In Robert's view, when someone expresses kindness, one should reciprocate. Zach lit a cigarette and blew out smoke. Robert, who was eager to learn, took this opportunity to ask a question. He said that before the catastrophe, humans had a lot of technology. Why has it all disappeared now? Zach looked at Robert for a moment. He said, "It's over." After the catastrophe, just surviving was considered good enough for humanity. Who would have the time and energy to study? Zach glanced towards the fortress as he continued. "Although some information has been preserved, it is only in the hands of a few." He stubbed out the remaining half of the cigarette in his hand. He wanted to save half of it for later, but would it be a bit embarrassing to do so in front of Robert? Zach stood up to go change his clothes, indicating that they smelled of smoke. Robert suddenly looked a bit displeased. He said, "So it's fine for me to smell it then? Sir, you didn't ask me to stay away earlier either." Zach didn't seem very happy to hear that. At this moment, the palace in Robert's mind spoke again. The voice said, "A mission. The thirst for knowledge has never been a bad thing. But what is learned must be taught to others." During the afternoon class, the students all felt very fresh. When a Robert several years older than them stood outside the door, many students turned to look at him. It took Zach several knocks on the blackboard to stop the students' curiosity. "This afternoon, we will have a survival class. What would you do if you encountered a pack of wolves in the wild?" Zach pointed to Robert and said, "What would you do if you encountered a pack of wolves in the wild?" Robert thought for a moment and said that one should try to choose a hillside if encountering a pack of wolves in the wild. The location is surrounded by trees on all sides because choosing a cemetery with good feng shui is preferable in this way. When Zach had no response to Robert's answer. But little did he know that Robert himself was now puzzled. Isn't this about sharing the knowledge he knows with everyone? Why hasn't the task been completed yet? He hesitated for a moment and said, "Sir, you probably have never seen the wild wolves outside." He continued, "Don't even mention encountering a pack of wolves. Even if you encounter a lone wolf, it's the same. Let's just go directly to the cemetery." Originally, Robert thought that Zach would argue back. But unexpectedly, he ended up becoming the substitute teacher himself. Task completed. Reward, 1.0 strength. Now Robert is really sure. The palace in his mind is indeed a unique ability. When Ryan excitedly said on the way home after school, "Brother, you are now a substitute teacher. Maybe in the future, you can take over Teacher Zach as our teacher in small town." On the way home, the two brothers saw a group of mercenaries looking for a guide to Mountain J. and a unique woman in the crowd caught Robert's attention. How terrifying this woman is. At only 17 years old, she possesses a perfect level of firearm weapons skill. However, such a woman is actually part of a private mercenary team. Her name is Julia, and when Robert passed by her, the feeling he brought, it's like encountering a wild beast in the wilderness. The two brothers witnessed the troops going to find Walter. Maybe Walter will recommend Robert to be the guide. The danger of Mouton-J is understood by Robert. It might be a case of being able to enter, but not being able to come out. Suddenly, Robert heard footsteps outside. It is unusual for there to be so much movement on the streets of small town at night. But Robert quickly guessed who the other party was. And he guessed their purpose. They learned about Robert's information from the grocery store owner, Walter, although they had doubts about his mental problem. But they also asked some other people. It seems that everyone thinks Robert is the best choice as their guide. "Robert, come out quickly. We have important guests," Walter shouted with a smile. Suddenly, the door curtain of the hut was violently lifted. Robert joyfully shook Walter's hand and said, "Mr. Wang, congratulations. Father and son are safe." This action confused everyone. They pointed at Robert and looked at Walter. Even though they were sick, Walter still insisted that he was fine. "Father and son are safe" means the same as "mother and son are safe." As soon as the words fell, they turned and left. Originally, they had some expectations for the legendary Robert, but unexpectedly encountered a mentally ill person. Robert stood at the doorstep of the hut, watching them go away. Walter was still apologizing profusely beside him, saying, "Please listen to my explanation." The group of people were too lazy to listen to Walter's explanation. They said, "Walter, I give you until dawn to find a suitable candidate for us. Don't make trouble for us." Robert stood happily at the door of the shack, looking like he had nothing to do, watching the excitement. However, at this moment, Julia actually turned around and glanced at Robert. Robert suddenly had a feeling as if he had been seen through. Random learning target skill. A random draw of the opponent's firearm weapon skill. Do you want to learn? Palace prompt sound constantly. You have learned advanced firearm weapons mastery. Robert has some doubts in his heart. How did basic skill chart learn to advanced skill? Originally, basic skill chart can learn any skill of advanced and below. Advanced skill chart has a chance to learn the target's natural ability. At this moment, Robert remembered Julia. He suddenly asked, saying, "What is Julia's firearm weapons skill level?" The perfect two words deeply reflected in Robert's mind. Such a person would be in a mercenary team. The things behind it must be complicated. He said, "Bro, why are you always staring at someone's back?" Ryan grabbed the cloak and asked. The curtain of the neighboring hut was lifted up. A female voice asked, "Whose back are you looking at, and where?" At this moment, Ryan and Robert were both stunned. The person who came out of the neighboring hut was actually Luna. In this absurd apocalypse, Luna was being forced into transactions. She even went as far as to offer her own brick house and hut in exchange. She approached the other party as a neighbor, just after Luna appeared next door to Robert. Ryan whispered in Robert's ear, "Bro, you're still a virgin, right? If you don't understand anything, feel free to ask." This question left Robert dumbfounded. The embarrassed duo said hi to Luna and then left. The two people in the room saw the potatoes and antibiotics under the table. Remembering being injured by a wolf pack last year, it was also in this place that there was a pill that saved my life. It now seems that these medicines were left here by Luna. At that moment, a rough voice was heard from outside the shack. The voice said, "Luna, so you've moved here. I brought you some cigarettes." Robert and Ryan glanced at each other. Both of them frowned. Luna said, "I'm not doing that deal anymore." The man seemed to hear something funny. He said, "If you don't do that kind of thing, what will you eat and drink? Who will give you cigarettes to smoke in the future?" Robert stood up. He untied his bone blade from his calf. Just at this moment, a voice from the palace in Robert's mind came through. Mission, help. When Robert's slender and muscular figure rushed towards the man like a cheetah, the man quickly drew his own knife from his waist and slashed towards him. However, the next moment, his mocking expression suddenly stopped. The bone blade collided with the iron weapon, shattering into 2 pieces. Robert grabbed the man's wrist, while his other fist struck towards the opponent like a hammer. Robert looked at Luna, questioning who he was. She said he was a foreman from the coal mine over there. The person who was stabbed to death in small town last night was led by him, because he heard that person had a habit of saving money. Coincidentally, he owed money to the casino, so he became malicious. Luna repeated the boasting words of the man from yesterday. Just as Robert was preparing to take action, Palace's voice rang out again. Mission! Give the enemy a way out! As soon as Palace finished speaking, Robert squatted down, picking up the iron tool and stabbed it into the man's abdomen. He said, You probably have about 3 minutes now. If you go to the clinic in small town for stitching up in time, there may still be hope to survive, Robert said calmly. The man, upon hearing this, disregarded the pain. Without saying a word, he immediately got up and ran towards the clinic. Mission completed, rewarding basic level skill chart. Due to your lack of weaponry, a side quest has been activated. Robert paused for a moment, not sure how Palace is determined. He turned to look at Luna. Luna looked a bit fragile in the night, and he said, Can you quit smoking? Luna nodded vigorously. Robert was pulling his hair at this moment. He said, Although I am very handsome, we are not possible. Luna's expression instantly became stunned. She said, I only see you as a younger brother. Now it's Robert's turn to be stunned. Awkwardly, they headed towards their own hut with Ryan. Luna burst into laughter when she saw Ryan like this, as if all those bad feelings had vanished into thin air. Robert, on the other hand, closed his eyes and carefully examined the palace internally. He said, This side quest is quite interesting. Be careful to look at it. This is the all-purpose wound medicine given by the palace. It can instantly heal external injuries caused by swords, spears, and other weapons. When taken orally, it can make a man stronger as he ages. Just now, Robert received a side quest from the palace. The task is to receive heartfelt thanks 100 times. Each thank you will earn a thank you coin. Each use can obtain this medicine from the palace vending machine. When he got the all-purpose wound medicine for the first time, he applied it directly to his arm. The effect was surprisingly good. In Robert's eyes, the value of this bottle of medicine, roughly speaking, is $1 billion. In order to obtain more thank you coins to exchange for the all-purpose wound medicine, Robert even deliberately opened a surgical outpatient clinic. However, due to his background, nobody is willing to seek treatment from him. He can only reluctantly bring in people himself. After being coated with all-purpose wound medicine by Robert, he was dubbed Ironhead. Out of curiosity about the ingredients of all-purpose wound medicine, he tasted some with his tongue. As a result, he kept his wife busy all night. Of course, all this information was obtained from Walter's mouth. He knew that Robert had such a magical medicine. Walter did too. He came directly to ask for the medicine. Robert sold a bottle for 600 yuan, and also received 1 thank you coin as a bonus. With a good reputation, Robert's clinic also successfully opened for business. Just as the clinic opened, 3 people covered in injuries happened to walk past the entrance. At that moment, the notification from the palace sounded, instructing him to treat the 3 patients. Although it is said to be, "Help!" Robert used force directly, binding the 3 people and bringing them back. Luna came out and saw the situation, thinking that these people were fighting. It turns out they were injured because the boiler factory exploded. Robert, who knows the reason, is ready to have Luna stitch up their wounds. Although all-purpose wound medicine has miraculous effects, we cannot let everyone think that this medicine works too well. Luna gathered her courage and started stitching up a person's wound. Then, there was a sizzling sound, and a burnt smell rose from the person's skin. The man trembled and asked, "I understand using fire to sterilize the needle, but can you please wait for it to cool down before stitching?" After a series of ups and downs, the task was completed successfully, rewarding 1.0 strength and 1.0 agility. In the late night, news of a wolf pack entering small town spread among everyone's ears. The defenders inside the fortress also sprang into action to rescue the remaining people at the boiler factory. Seeing such a scene, Robert and Ryan instructed each other and also set out. At this moment, Robert was thinking that the master of the boiler factory was armed with a gun, but still was attacked by the wolf pack. Perhaps the wolves were too fast. They didn't have time to get the gun. Robert's purpose of this trip is to obtain firearms. This boy possesses a skill that many people dream of. As long as he makes a wish, dreams can come true. Robert walks in the dark. Robert, who has gained the advanced firearm weapons skill, deeply understands how important firearm weapons are in the present era. Suddenly, a gunshot rings out in the dark night. Robert suddenly turns his head towards the source of the sound. It is clearly a confrontation between a mercenary and a pack of wolves. Robert listens to the gunshots, and for some reason, he always feels that the clear sound is somewhat pleasant. As a result, his adrenaline starts to be secreted. The whole person becomes excited. He didn't go close to sneak a look at the battlefield. He only knew that now the wolves and the mercenaries were in battle. So the factory over there is safe. Robert deliberately observed their wounds for a moment. It seems that they were all bitten directly on the neck by the wolves. He thought for a moment. He didn't enter directly through the main gate but climbed up the pipeline outside the factory. When Robert climbed to the top floor, he felt a chill in his heart. It seemed that there were no living people in the factory. The wolves had swept through the entire factory, and no one was spared. Robert smashed open the glass on the top floor and jumped in. He looked around. The corridor was full of bloodstains and corpses. This huge factory seemed to have turned into a hell. However, Robert suddenly noticed something unusual. All the corpses seemed to be running in one direction, as if something was guiding them. He followed this route all the way down to the underground floor. This was an emergency shelter. The further he went, the more corpses there were. Robert came to an iron gate. After thinking for a while, he raised his hand and knocked on the door 3 times. With a creak, the iron gate suddenly opened, revealing a middle-aged man inside. Robert bent over and was about to rush over, but when the middle-aged man saw that the visitor was not a mercenary, his first reaction was to raise his own handgun. Both recognized each other. The middle-aged man was Master Dylan, the master of the factory. Robert analyzed that he must have been the first to escape here, closed the gate to keep others out, and was now threatening himself with a gun. Dylan smirked. The handgun gave him great courage. He was fearless now. Dylan asked, "How do you know all this?" Robert replied, "I know one more thing." Robert slowly said, "Your gun doesn't have the safety on. And you won't have time to even turn it on after he deals with Dylan." Robert used the bone blade on Dylan's chest, creating wounds mimicking the marks of wolf claws. When Robert left, there was no one left alive in the entire factory. Upon arriving at the shack, Robert hid the gun under the iron pot. Before he could talk to Ryan for a few sentences, a group of mercenaries arrived outside. It is said that they are here to look for the lost gun. While several people entered the house to search, Ryan clasped his hands together and began to make a wish. A large group of people in such a small hut. He still couldn't find a pistol after these people left. Ryan took a deep breath. He then fell to the ground and couldn't get up. After Ryan made a wish, what followed was a backlash. Watching Luna's thoughtful and caring demeanor, Robert gently said, "You can rest assured. I will definitely ensure that you all have a good life ahead." What they got instead was the disdain of the two of them. The next morning, Walter came early in the morning to report good news. Because Robert's all-purpose wound medicine cured Leon's golden cudgel. He happened to encounter the doctor from the clinic running away. Robert runs this surgical outpatient department. Now he has suddenly become a qualified doctor. In the morning, Robert and Luna packed up casually and went to the clinic. Who would want to live in a shanty when they could live in a clean and bright brick house? It was just the moment when Robert and a few others walked into the clinic. The whole person is not well. A banner hung right in the middle of the clinic wall. Skilled hands bring back to life Leon. Just as Robert was lost in thought, the palace alert tone sounded. Outstanding task. Whether to continue treating 10 patients. He has just taken on the task. Someone came to the door for medical treatment. Robert said with a sly smile. What injuries do you have? Let me tell you. You're in the right place coming to us. They said. That's great. We're not injured. It's just that my wife is 4 months pregnant. She suddenly felt some pain in her stomach this morning. We're afraid of any accidents, so we came to have a checkup. Robert was speechless on the spot. He pondered for a moment, then asked, saying, To protect the big one or the small one? This sentence left the couple speechless for a while. He then expressed that he did not know how to examine gynecological issues and sincerely asked the couple to seek help from someone else. The couple looked at each other in surprise. They did not expect Robert to say such a thing. They found Robert much more reliable than the previous doctor. They expressed their gratitude and then left. He unexpectedly received 2 expressions of gratitude. And then the clinic started to become busy. The reputation is getting better and better. Robert also successfully completed the task. Receiving thank you coin also triggers subsequent tasks. He asked Palace what my current strength and agility attributes are. Palace said strength 5.5, agility 4.1. Robert didn't speak. At this point, it seems that his own attributes are relatively balanced. Ryan suddenly asked, Brother, why don't you just treat all those patients? That's money. Robert gave him a look and said, No, we won't treat. We can't be like the previous doctor. A person must have principles. But if we're in trouble, there may not necessarily be someone to help. Ryan lowered his head and whispered softly. Robert looked directly at Ryan, knowing that Ryan was still young. In a solemn tone during this formative phase, Robert said, Ryan, remember this. Don't let the sorrow of the times become your own sorrow. The man opened his mouth and blew out a bubble of saliva. Little did he know what would happen next. The bubble burst and unleashed a shockwave. Directly lift Ryan off the ground. This is one of the forms of super ability. His name is Zion. He awakened a super ability and came to see Robert for treatment. Night falls. Robert is thinking that supernatural entities are starting to appear slowly. The world is becoming more and more dangerous. He hopes to unlock weapons sooner. There was a sudden abnormal noise outside the courtyard. Robert quickly got up and walked towards the outside, only to hear someone suddenly jump up from the wall outside. The person's hands gripped the wall, and then with a strong effort, the whole person jumped into the yard. Those people just looked up and happened to see Robert looking at them curiously. The next moment, he saw Robert suddenly bend his waist and kick his leg. The uninvited guest fell to the ground in pain, clutching his groin and groaning. The other 2 people were also swiftly dealt with by Robert. Just as he was about to interrogate the other party, a knock sounded on the door. A familiar voice said, Hurry, open the door. Robert remembered the voice. It was the one who led the mercenaries to search the entire small town before. Just as he was about to kick down the door, the clinic's door opened. Immediately after, all the soldiers outside the door became confused. They saw Robert wrapped in a large brocade flag. On the flag, it was written, Magical hands bringing back to life, Leon. As a result, the man bypassed him and walked straight inside. He shouted, Search! When the officer saw the soldiers still rolling on the ground in the yard, his face darkened. He said, A bunch of trash. He then turned to Robert and said, I'm Connor. if you want to find Leon to vent your anger, you can mention my name," he said. "That's not possible," Robert chuckled and said. "You didn't do anything wrong either." Connor carefully inspected the soldiers under Robert's command and searched for a few minutes before coming back to report. No discoveries were made. Without saying a word, Connor led the team away. As he left, he turned around and gave Robert a sly smile. He said, "You would have been better off born within the fortress. Come serve as a soldier under me. You'd be stronger than this bunch of useless people under my command." When Robert learned the name of this officer was Connor, he was quite shocked in his heart. He was very worried that this guy would keep biting on him and not let go. When the sky was bright, Robert and the others were awakened by a voice. "Look everyone, the previous mercenary has returned." He opened the door and went out to take a look. He was still thinking, how did he come back so quickly? Looking at these people. When they left, each of them was clean and tidy. Now they are more and more disheveled, one after another. Robert calculated the time, about a week. The other party probably hasn't reached the foot of Mountain J yet. Let's take a look at the girl with baseball cap following the off-road vehicle. From this point of view alone, this girl with baseball cap is much stronger than those accompanying mercenaries. He asked, "Do you know which are the most vulnerable parts of the human body? There are almost 20 cartilages around the entire neck near the trachea. No matter which one you shatter, it can instantly render the opponent unable to fight back." This is Robert acting as a substitute teacher, teaching children the most important lesson, how to confront others. Zach previously taught about how to face the natural environment. And the reason he wants to teach this course is, it's because he witnessed firsthand how ordinary people were killed during the apocalypse. After Zion's superpowers awakened, he went around boasting to his friends and acquaintances. Because of his friend's betrayal, this also led to Zion being captured by the people inside the fortress. He was taken to be experimented on. And Zion's father also betrayed them due to dissatisfaction with these people. He took an axe and argued with several people. The result he got was, Zion's father died with several people. His mother couldn't bear the pressure and chose to end her own life. Robert witnessed all this with his own eyes. He was angry and frustrated by the injustice of the world. But all he could do was to empower more people to protect themselves. That's it. Robert chose to teach children how to confront others, so that the class would not be delayed this time. He quickly finished teaching the knowledge and then dismissed the class, which also resulted in him receiving a wave of thanks smoothly. At this moment, Robert saw Walter running into the schoolhouse through the classroom door. He said, "You should pack up your things now. Someone just brought me a letter from Leon. It says that Leon agrees to have you as their guide." Robert froze. He realized that this team must have a more covert and significant purpose. Otherwise, how could the other party persuade Leon to release the person? Anyway, Robert may really have to go on this trip. He turned and headed towards the schoolhouse backyard. Walter asked anxiously, "Where are you going?" He said, "I'm going to talk to schoolhouse teacher Zach about something. Have Ryan and Luna stay at schoolhouse at least until I come back," Robert firmly said. Only in this way, Robert can have no worries. Inside the clinic, Luna and Ryan are helping to tidy up. Before leaving, he stuffed his money into Luna's pocket. He knew that the money couldn't be left with Ryan in case Luna had any ideas about it. She could just take the money and leave, but she wouldn't have any malicious intent towards Ryan. Luna smiled kindly and said, "I understand what you mean. You can go with peace of mind. Come back safely." Bang, bang, bang. 3 knocks on the door. The door opened. Robert looked up. He suddenly saw a well-dressed girl standing at the door. She said, "You should know everything by now. Come with us." But just then, Robert suddenly heard Palace in his mind saying, "Mission, refuse to accompany to Mountain J." Robert began to pretend he had an intellectual disability and said, "Dad's dad is called Grandpa." Robert is pretending to be crazy and naive in order to refuse to go to Mountain J. At this time, a mercenary officer walked over. He looked at Robert and chuckled, saying, "Stop pretending. We've dealt with each other before." Robert looked up and saw that the newcomer was indeed Connor. Now he couldn't pretend anymore, with this guy around. He probably had to go even if he didn't want to. Looking at these people, Robert directly turned his face away. He said, "I'm not going." Palace said, "Mission accomplished. Reward, basic skill chart, which allows you to learn the abilities of others." Robert's eyes light up. He thought, "So the mission is completed just like that." Indeed, Palace's criteria for judging whether the task is completed or not is not based on established facts, but simply on Robert's attitude. Connor, seeing Robert refuse, was just about to get angry. "I'll go," Robert said seriously, leaving Connor looking puzzled. Walking up to Lucy, he said, "I want a reward of 30,000 yuan. And Connor can't come along with him." Robert understood in his heart. Connor has checked himself twice. It's uncertain what trouble he might cause if he comes along. At this moment, Lucy turned around and glanced at the girl with baseball cap, who subtly nodded. Lucy said she agreed. "Connor, you can go back." Just now, Lucy cast a subtle glance at the girl with baseball cap. It caught Robert's eye. He said, "We are all teammates now. I still don't know everyone's names yet." "This is Field Officer Second Lieutenant Cooper," she said coldly. "My name is Julia." Robert sat in the cab, the sound of the engine roaring in his ears. At this moment of departure, Robert felt a little reluctant in his heart. No matter how dirty or broken this place is, it has been his home for all these years. The road to Mountain J is not easy to travel, mostly dirt roads. Sometimes Robert sits inside the car's bucket. I also saw concrete roads occasionally appearing on the ground. But those roads have long been shattered for unknown reasons, becoming dilapidated. He looked at the vegetation on the roadside, which had grown a lot. Even Teacher Zach's cabbage at home was much taller than before. Robert thought, "Maybe in the future, even one potato could feed a family of 3. Thinking about food, Robert patted his stomach. Out of curiosity, he lifted the tarp and took a peek. He saw biscuits and bottled water. Night fell. The convoy stopped and began to set up camp. Everyone got off the cars to get food. They went to the back of the pickup truck. The result shocked them. They asked Robert, "What are you doing?" Robert looked at the newcomers and he said, "Don't be so shocked. I didn't do anything." He burped, saying, "I couldn't hold it in after eating so much." Robert stood up to stretch his body and casually brushed off the cookie crumbs on himself. Several people pulled Robert off the car, under the disapproving looks of the crowd. Robert replied contemptuously, "Take a bite of your cookie. Why do you want to hit me?" Faced with others questioning, Lucy replied coldly, "You can address them directly. But do not influence our itinerary. You can handle him however you like when we return from wall number 112. Robert was seen walking into the forest. The others were a little anxious. If Robert leaves, they will waste time again today. Without a guide, they won't be able to navigate through the woods to find the way to Mountain J. Robert turned around with a big smile on his face and said, "I'm just going to find some food. Why are you panicking?" The staff awkwardly explained, "The last guy died around here last time." Robert walked in the forest, his mind constantly pondering how the last guy died. At this moment, Robert saw some wood chips on a tree. These were traces left behind by termites after eating. He looked towards the tree roots, and indeed found an unusually swollen mound of soil enclosing the tree roots. Robert excitedly pried open the soil mound with a few swift movements. The brown termites inside were crawling rapidly. He was planning to use the termite queen and nest as bait to fish. The termite queen and nest drifted slowly downstream along the river. Robert slowly followed along the riverbank. All of a sudden, a shadow swam out from under the ant hill. At the same time, ripples appeared on the water's surface. A big fish opened its mouth as if to swallow the ant hill, and the Ant Queen in one gulp. But it had barely opened its mouth when Robert's branch was already there, lightning fast retracting the branch. The big black fish struggled on the branch to no avail. Robert cautiously moved away from the riverbank little by little. It seemed that the blood of the black fish had attracted something sinister. Underneath the river, it was actually gradually gathering. Countless shadows were moving and gathering densely. Back to the camp. The smell of Robert's grilled fish was very appealing. When these people smelled the aroma of grilled fish, they wrinkled their noses. Suddenly, Robert heard Pallas saying in his mind, "Good things should be shared with others." Robert was stunned for a while. He picked up a branch with fish skewered on it and walked towards them. They asked, "What's going on? Are you inviting us to eat fish?" "Well, that's not a bad idea," he replied. "What are you thinking? I just want you to have a look and share my joy." This is what Pallas said. Mission accomplished. Reward, 1.0 agility. Robert looked at the fish, which was about half a meter long. It was definitely too much for one person to finish. He said, "Half a fish in exchange for 3 bottles of water." Robert sat alone by his own rising fire. Julia walked over and sat across from him. She calmly said, "Fish." Robert found it strange that the other person's calm tone was a bit unsettling. However, he surprisingly couldn't find a reason to refuse the other person. He said, "Just take a few bites, only a few bites," Robert insisted. Julia unexpectedly opened her mouth wide and almost ate a quarter of the remaining fish in just one bite. Robert was shocked at that moment. He said, "You are a girl. Can't you be a bit more reserved?" In this